So Prager U recently put out this video entitled, "Why do you hate conservatives?" So let's answer it. Hey everyone, my name's Christian Verstappen and I have a lot to say about many things. As we get into this video here, I want to point out the obvious, as I always do, because these are important things. Notice we have a black woman in the thumbnail and we're going to have a black woman speaking. Prager U likes to do this especially when they tackle issues, especially having to deal with things like racism or other touchy issues, so that they can say, look, we're not racist, we're having a black person speak about this. So I want to point that out. But for those that are unaware, actually, let's get into Prager U a little bit and kind of what they're about. Prager U, first of all, is not a real university. Prager U is, well, as I understand it, it's really just this website / YouTube channel that is funded by, well, a bunch of oil billionaires. So if we go to the About Us page, we promote American values through creative use of educational videos that reach millions of people online. Nonprofit Prager University Federation, Prager U, offers a free alternative to the dominant left-wing ideology in culture, media, and education. Whether you're searching for a deeper understanding, a new perspective, or a way to get involved, Prager U helps people of all ages think and live better. With such amazing videos such as... Oh, I'm literally already on their thing. I could have just... whatever. By the way, I have to point this out. I don't know if this is intentional or not. This looks like two things to me. One, it looks like a 5-star Dragon Ball. Well, okay, I mean, it doesn't actually look like a 5-star Dragon Ball. Really, it looks like a Dragon Ball, though, just in general, because it makes me think of a Dragon Ball. I only say 5 stars because it's got 5 dots. But anyway, it looks like a Dragon Ball to me. The other thing... No, it's one of these Dragon Balls. Oh, no, you know what it is? It looks like the 4-star Dragon Ball, but, like, turned around. Here. Like, if you take this and you flip it, which I can't really do here, but I think you get the idea. Anyway, it's not important. The organization depends on donations to produce its content. Much of Prager U's funding comes from hydraulic fracturing billionaires, Dan and Ferris Wilks. 2 members of the Wilks family sit on Prager U's board. The next largest donor, Lynn and Harry Barley Foundation. Other donors include the Morgan Family Foundation, Donors Trust, the late yada yada. You get the idea, right? They're funded... Oh, it's fracking. Okay. They're funded by oil billionaires. And of course, because of this, they put out a ton of content that promotes, well, the status quo, but really promotes things that the oil billionaires want them to promote, and yet they will constantly accuse leftist ideology of being promoted in media. I mean, you even saw it on their About page, where they said, you know, we're promoting stuff different from the dominant left-wing media. Or was it? Oh, it's gone. Free alternative to the dominant left-wing ideology in culture, media, and education. Right. So instead of the becoming more accepted progressive ideology, as it were, which really isn't even like an ideology being pushed because of people actually believing in it. It's really being pushed because more people in general are getting on board with it, and capitalism wants to sell to more people, and it's the whole thing. But regardless, let's get into the video proper. Why do you hate conservatives?
Why do you hate conservatives? Well, let's not say hate. Let's say dislike, because you don't really hate anyone.
This is true.
You may dislike them because they want to ban abortion.
That's one of the reasons.
Conservatives say they're all for freedom, but when it comes to a woman's freedom to choose what she wants to do with her own body, they sing a different tune.
Real quick, by the way, I want to be clear. I've talked about this before. I don't hate or even dislike conservative people. I dislike the ideas and the harmful rhetoric that conservatives spew. And I am somebody who myself used to be more, I would say, centrist, right-leaning. Now I've shifted more toward, I don't really know how far of a leftist I would say I am. I'm definitely not as far as to say that I'm accepting of something like, say, communism per se, but more of a social democrat, possibly socialist, I guess you could say.
You may dislike them because they oppress people of color and deny the fact that America is systemically racist.
Yes.
Conservatives say that everybody is equal regardless of race, and that racism has little to no effect on the daily lives of people of color.
And again, she is a person of color. There's a reason why they're having her present this.
So, they just ignore the issue altogether. You may dislike them because they don't believe in climate change. Scientists keep telling us we're overheating the planet, and conservatives don't seem to care. They're more...
No. It's not just that they don't seem to... See, this is what I'm talking about the oil billionaires. It's not just that they don't seem to care. It's that they are pushing policies which are making things worse and preventing things like green energy and things of that nature where we could help moving things back in the correct direction. We're already kind of fucked as it is from a ton of data we've seen, but the question is, can we make things get better at all? How bad can we prevent it from getting too bad? Well, the ship has kind of sailed in a lot of ways, but we are still trying to adapt and innovate to make things better. And a lot of policy that conservatives, like people who are funded by oil billionaires, push rhetoric that, of course, is going to be in line with what the oil billionaires want them to say, things that are going to help their company. You know, their whole point is to speak against the people that are trying to speak truth to power. They're punching down, really, so that their benefactors are happy.
Profits than people. But what good is money if you have no planet to spend it on?
Exactly. I would love to ask these questions.
You may dislike them because they're obsessed with guns. How are we...
I don't really... Okay, me personally, I don't ever want to own a gun. I hope I never have to. I view guns as a necessary evil. I don't think that all conservatives are necessarily obsessed with guns, nor do I think that people wanting to use guns or anything like that are bad in and of themselves.
Are we ever going to stop gun violence if we don't get guns off the streets?
It's not about getting guns off the streets. It's more so about things like common sense gun laws and stuff really being enforced. That would be a much better idea.
And how are we ever going to get guns off the streets if conservatives block every common sense gun law?
Oh, there you go.
You may dislike them because they're so intolerant. What's the harm of calling somebody by their preferred pronouns?
Actually, yeah, what is the harm? Like, seriously. You understand how nicknames work, don't you? Even if you don't agree. I mean, we have people where, like, okay, one of the most common names for not so much anymore for obvious reasons, but the name Richard used to be pretty common a couple decades ago. And of course, it got shortened to Dick, which is now, used for many other different things. But how the fuck do you get Dick from Richard? Is it something that really makes sense? No, but you're not going to be like, oh, your name's not Dick, your name's Richard. Now, I will say, I used to be very picky about this when I was a kid. My name is Christian, and I would hate when people called me Chris when I was a little kid. Now I'm kind of like Christian, Chris, whatever, But anyway, yeah, no, calling somebody by what they identify as what they want to be called, there's no harm in that. And when you refer to somebody by their pronouns, you are reaffirming their gender identity, which is a good thing that helps them to feel better about themselves, helps them to feel included and wanted and like they belong. And why would you go against that?
Why can't conservatives just show some compassion instead of obsessing over every kind of behavior they don't like? You may dislike them because if they got their way, they'd get rid of democracy and establish an authoritarian theocracy.
We actually see people like Marjorie Taylor Greene actively calling for that kind of stuff. So you can't say this is some bullshit.
Bye-bye separation of church and state. Hello, fascism. After all that, you might sum up conservatives with one word. Ugh.
That's not the word I'd use, but all right.
If any of this resonates with you, I get it.
Actually, by the way, I would really sum it up with fear. It really is all about fear and disgust or resistance to change is really the main thing. It's completely antithetical to progressivism, as in things changing and possibly getting better. Look, the people that argue against many of these kind of things today are the same kind of people who were arguing against saying how anesthesia shouldn't be a thing that is administered to people when they have to have a surgery, because pain is something that people are just supposed to experience. It's part of the natural way of life.
I've been there, and this surprised me, I found they actually have reasons for thinking the way they do.
It doesn't matter if they have reasons for thinking the way they do. I had reasons for thinking the way that I've thought about many things. That doesn't mean, just because you have reasons for thinking, it doesn't mean it's valid.
Here are some of them. On abortion. To start, we can agree that no one likes abortion, but there is a clear divide on the issue. Progressives focus their attention on the mother. Conservatives, while they have compassion for the mother, focus their attention on the baby. They see a human being growing in a mother's womb as innocent and vulnerable. Those babies deserve to be protected, since they obviously can't protect themselves.
Until they're out of the womb, and then it's like George Carlin said: if you're preborn, you're here. Let me find it. If you're preborn, you're fine. If you're preschool, you're fucked. George Carlin had a great quote in general about abortion and things of that nature. I'm not going to go ahead and read this whole thing to you, but definitely feel free to check this out. And we also have my favorite quote on abortion. Here it is. I love this quote. This man was a pastor, by the way. This one I will read, by Dave Barnard. This really hits the whole concept of, and if you yourself are anti-abortion, and I get it, I used to be anti-abortion myself. I used to say, "Oh, I'm anti-abortion but pro-adoption." Like, I think a woman should be able to just give up the baby, give it up for adoption if they don't want to carry it. But unironically believed and thought that abortion was murder and things like that. But this is my favorite quote on the matter. The unborn are a convenient group of people to advocate for. They never make demands of you. They are morally uncomplicated. Unlike the incarcerated, addicted, or the chronically poor, they don't resent your condescension, my apologies, or complain that you are not politically correct. Unlike widows, they don't ask you to question patriarchy. Unlike orphans, they don't need money, education, or childcare. Unlike aliens, they don't bring all that racial, cultural, and religious baggage that you dislike. They allow you to feel good about yourself without any work at creating or maintaining relationships. And when they're born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. It's almost as if by being born, they have died to you. You can love the unborn and advocate for them without substantially challenging your own wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love if you want to claim you love Jesus, but actually dislike people who breathe. Prisoners, immigrants, the sick, the poor, widows, orphans, all the groups that are specifically mentioned in the Bible, they all get thrown under the bus for the unborn. That quote fucking hit me hard. That is the exact way to really understand the hypocrisy of pro-life and how conservatives view abortion.
On racism, conservatives don't deny that racist people exist, but when it comes to the narrative of systemic racism, conservatives are unconvinced. Of course, there are disparities in this country, but why assume that these disparities are because of racism?
This is why they have a black woman talking, by the way. This is it.
Good
Oh, and the woman stuff. That's why it's a black woman.
schools, good parents, good habits,
So they can say they're not racist or sexist.
and good communities would go much further toward alleviating poverty and expanding opportunity than a lifetime of racial justice movement.
Wait a minute.
Alleviating poverty, parents, good habits, and good disparities are because of racism. Good schools, good parents, good habits, and good communities would go much further toward alleviating poverty and expanding opportunity than a lifetime of racial justice movements.
Yes, that is correct. However, good housing, good family, financial security, I think that was financial security.
Poverty,
Let's
good
check it out again.
parents, good habits, and good
Habits, and good community. These are all things that are made marginally more difficult because of systemic racism. There have been many videos and such that have discussed and gone into things of how systemic racism really does hurt people, and debunking videos. Like, I'm pretty sure Prager U even did a video about debunking systemic racism. But the reality is, when we have things like history of redlining and a bunch of other racism and racial inequity, and we have a justice system that predominantly affects black people, especially black men, more than anything else, we have people ending up in poorer schools because of the redlining, not having as great families because of the things like separating a father from their children due to something like having a small possession of weed or something of that nature, non-violent drug crimes. Bad habits, if you will, or not having good habits. Again, pretty hard to develop good habits and such when you're dealing with all the bullshit that this is all involving. And good communities. The reason people in poorer neighborhoods tend to not have great communities is, again, because of the redlining. And when you have things like cops being very adversarial toward black people, for example, they are going to be more likely to form gangs and more likely to have these communities that are, let's be real, pretty toxic and dangerous and harmful. But it's the natural, it's how these people, how these communities have reacted and have formed other communities, because when you can't trust the system, you form your own communities, and oftentimes those aren't that great.
communities would go much further toward alleviating poverty and expanding opportunity than a lifetime of racial justice movements.
And this, that a lifetime of racial justice movements. The lifetime of racial, first of all, we don't hope it's not a lifetime, but the racial justice movements are so that we can have these for everybody, regardless of race.
Poverty. By the way, these rules apply to everyone, regardless of skin color. On climate change, conservatives have very little faith in computer models that have been inaccurately predicting disaster for nearly half a century. Conservatives have a lot of faith, however, in human ingenuity to overcome climate.
Yet you're not doing anything about it. Even if that was true, where you want to say, oh, we don't trust the models, okay, what are you going to do? Wait till shit hits the fan and then you're going to start preparing for it? Did you know that things like Hurricane Katrina and realizing that the dams could break in New Orleans was actually something a model predicted, yet the people in charge of them decided not to allow them to have the funding in order to actually take the steps for a possible failure that wasn't likely to actually happen?
Is air conditioning but a human adaptation to the environment?
What is air conditioning? All right, listen. I live in Florida. I would fucking hate living here without air conditioning. I and most people probably wouldn't live here without air conditioning. But yes, air conditioning is a human adaptation to the environment. But what do you do when the environment gets so bad you can't adapt to it anymore? At least it still is livable circumstances even without air conditioning in Florida, and still was even hundreds of years ago before air conditioning was actually developed and put in homes and things of that nature. But what do you do when everything is so hot and you have climate refugees and you have all these different things happening which you could have prevented? How do you adapt at that point? And what is the argument going to be at that point when we can make adaptations at that point? What is the argument going to be then? Oh, we don't need to change anything because, I don't know, this is God's plan or something? Like what?
See Miami or Phoenix for further reference. This is not to say we should simply do nothing. Nuclear power, for example, holds so much promise as a renewable and safe energy source. Conservatives don't understand why environmentalists oppose it. It makes them skeptical and suspicious that the real agenda behind the environmentalist movement is not saving the planet, but giving more power to the government to control people's lives.
Remember, I'll bet I got rid of the tab, didn't I? Funded by oil billionaires. That's why they push this anti-global warming rhetoric, this pro-oil rhetoric.
On guns, we all want to live in a safe society. This is why firearms are regulated in every state. But we know bad guys will always find a way to get guns. See Chicago and Baltimore for further reference. That's why conservatives want guns, to protect themselves from the bad guys.
It's not about taking away your guns. It's about putting restrictions and, again, common sense gun laws to do things like, okay, we hear about horrible stories of shooters all the time in this country. And when you look at their history, their mental history and otherwise, you see they shouldn't have gotten a gun in the first place. We're talking about putting things in place like, say, put a longer wait period on people getting a gun. This would also do things like cut down on suicide, because someone can just get a gun and off themselves the same day. That's something that would be a lot less likely to happen if they had to go through a waiting period to get a gun. I mean, think about it. You need a proper license and go through a bit of a period while you fill out paperwork and everything to and have insurance and all this to have a car. Yet you don't for a gun? It's fucking wild.
It's not much more complicated than that. On tolerance, conservatives see tolerance as a two-way street. If someone demands to be addressed by certain pronouns and considers it intolerant if you don't comply, conservatives wonder why that isn't intolerant.
Nope. This is the argument of the we must be tolerant of intolerance. It's bullshit. These are the kind of people that want to just openly use slurs and stuff, say the N-word and other different phrases online. These free speech extremists. No. There's a great phrase that I really, really like, which is, "Your right to swing your fist ends at the end of my nose." You can do, I believe this personally, especially, I believe there's not a one-size-fits-all way to live life, and you should do whatever makes you happy, provided you aren't hurting anybody else. But that's the key. You aren't hurting anybody else. And you should do what you can to try to make life better for others as well. If you have somebody in your life who has different pronouns, for example, is not cisgender, does it really hurt you to refer to them as something different? I had a friend years ago, I mentioned nicknames before, but I had a friend years ago who for years, I knew him as his full name, his full on, we'll call him Robert. I knew him as, we'll say I knew him as Robert. For years, I knew him since elementary school. One day, he tells me, "I'm going to start going just by Bob. I'm going to shorten my name just to Bob." All right, cool. Whatever, dude. I still called him Robert a lot of the times because that's what I knew him as. But eventually, I caught on that everybody, including himself, was only referring to him as Bob at that point. So I followed suit and started referring to him as Bob as well. When somebody picks a new name, a new identity for themselves in some way, that is their journey, their life, their identity, not yours, and not yours to determine and decide what they should or shouldn't be. If I wanted to just go by Chris, like I mentioned earlier, I could do that, and it would be respectful for people to refer to me accordingly. Why is it then that much different if you're calling somebody by a different gendered name and different gendered pronouns? I really like the idea. I actually like that people are putting their pronouns in their bios on Twitter now, because I really like the idea. I talked to some of my friends about this who are LGBTQ as well. And my siblings, one, of course, who is a trans man at this point. He used to be a boy. Yeah, trans man, and a non-binary sibling as well. And both of them, I had asked them about this, like, what do you think of the idea? And I've asked other people this too, of basically making pronouns just as, just simultaneous with names. Like, "Hi, my name's Christian. My pronouns are he, him." Simple as that, right? Right? Why couldn't you? Why is that a difficult concept to just respect what people want to be called, how people identify? Why is that a difficult thing?
Why are a conservative's moral or religious beliefs less worthy of respect than anyone else's?
They aren't. But when you're forcing those moral or religious beliefs on other people, again, swing fist, nose. When your beliefs start infringing on other people's, that's when it becomes an issue. I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff that traditional Jews are supposed to practice, and I'm talking about Jewish religious people, just to be clear. And yet, we don't have off on Saturday, even though that's their day of rest. That's the day they go to the synagogue. How many holidays do you honor for Islamic people or any other religion that isn't Christianity? You don't. So are you really respecting of all religions, or do you want yours to be put on a pedestal?
On authoritarianism. Whenever conservatives win political power, they're typically trying to cut taxes and regulations, make the government smaller, and bolster constitutional freedoms like that of speech and religion.
No. They want to cut taxes for the wealthy, when they should have higher taxes, make government smaller. That's always been a weird one to me. But basically, they want government smaller in the way that just a few people in power basically control everybody else. And bolster, I mean, the branches of our government being as important as they are, are fundamental, or sorry, existing at all, are fundamental to our government functioning properly. If you have one branch of government have too much power, that's not a good thing. And that's what smaller government would do, for example. Bolster constitutional freedoms like that of speech and religion. Again, people that want to just shout slurs, people that want to enforce their religion. You have freedom of religion. You absolutely have freedom of religion. If you want to be any religion, you can. If you want to be no religion, you can. There's nothing wrong with any of that. You have those choices. You can go anywhere in most states and find churches very, very easily. If you want any kind of religion, you can experience those. There's nothing wrong with that. But forcing that onto other people is, again, where the issue happens. Oh, and here, I'll just do this so you can see the religion thing. You can see all of them. But I want to mention something as well on the free speech extremists. I can't show it for obvious reasons, but if you look up what happened shortly after Elon Musk bought Twitter and said, all right, anybody can say what they want, basically comedy is now legal, there were a lot of people just posting the N-word everywhere. It was fucked. It was bad. It was bad. It was really bad. Oops.
That doesn't sound very authoritarian, does it? Progressive policy almost always raises
Yes, it does.
taxes, expands regulations, increases the size of government, and now curtails free speech.
All right, raises taxes on the wealthy, trying to get them to pay back and make things more balanced. Expand regulations. The FDA, the way that we know that our food is safe is based on a system of regulations placed on food manufacturers. And that goes the same for everything that is manufactured and put out for public consumption. Regulations are good. Regulations help things stay safe and become better in a lot of ways. Increase the size of government. It really depends what you mean by that. If you're talking about, creating new policies and new, functions in government, and oh, this committee is going to do this, this group of people are going to do this, fine. Again, companies do that all the time. I'm a big fan. I've talked about the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. There is literally a department in that franchise now that handles the lore of that series. Companies do this kind of stuff all the time where they'll create different departments to handle different things. There's nothing wrong with that. And curtails free speech. Again, they're just talking about bigotry here. That's all they're talking about.
To a conservative, that sounds authoritarian. Well, now that you've heard a few of their arguments,
we have things on free speech already, which I would hope conservatives will even agree. Like, you can't shout fire in a crowded room. You can be arrested for that kind of thing. You can't when you're in court and you put your hand on the Bible, Miss Freedom of Religion, and you say you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, you are under perjury if you lie, if you are found lying in the court of law. That isn't really free speech, is it? Why can't I just lie? If I can get away with it, why can't I just lie?
do you dislike conservatives less than you did before? Not even a little? I'm Amla Epinobi, host of Unapologetic at PragerU.com for Prager University.
I kind of wonder what they thought they were going to achieve with this video. This is true. She actually made better arguments to hate them in the beginning than she did to not in the second half of the video. You may dislike conservatives because of all the views we hold. We hold all of those views. Now do you dislike conservatives less? Yeah, exactly. I felt my brain cells die with every explanation. Poor girl had to say this. Yeah. Alternate title: Prager U debunks itself for 5 minutes straight. Yeah, and yes, I'm not blind. I see the videos congratulating them as well. I just no. Oh my god, Jesus Christ. Well, there you go. There you have it. Why do we? So I guess you know what. As always, guys, these are my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Specifically, let me know why you hate conservatives, or if you actually have genuine, critiques of this video or anything like that. Please let me know that stuff too. I love hearing all your opinions and your ideas on different things. I am trying to just start a discussion here anyway, so yeah. Follow me on social media for more. Links in the description below. Subscribe to the button to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like, and if not, I hope you find something to do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.